second skill is the ability to build a logical structure of an argument. So we're going to visualize sentences, we're going to connect sentences, that's where the logical structure comes in, and then we're going to build, then we're going to apply the pre-thinking method to come up with assumptions. Now, as we build these skills, we're going to apply them at multiple places. We're going to apply the skill of visualization to not only to the argument, but also to answer choices. And what I'll demonstrate is that as you build on that ability to visualize, those confusing answer choices look and become fairly simple. Okay. With that, I'd like to get essentially get to know you guys a bit better. I have about 70 students in the webinar right now, so let's kind of get to know you guys. Now, the first thing, I think the big question here, which GMAT edition do you prefer? Are you aiming to take the current one, the Focus edition, or you could go for either one? Or essentially, those who don't know enough about the Focus edition, you guys can essentially choose the pertinent option. I have about 72 students in the webinar, 73 right now. I'd prefer to get at least 50 answers here. All right. I have about 49, 50 answers, 76 students in the webinar. For those of you who've just and then we have about 22%, 11% could go for either, and the other 11% don't know enough about it. For those of you who are e-GMATers and are going for the Focus Edition, we have a full Focus Edition course, which is included with your subscription. So just make sure you're aware of it, and then very soon we'll be launching the Focus Edition mocks as well. Now with that, for those of you who are not paid students, we have a phenomenal free trial. We have this concept of introduction to assumptions. We have a few more assumption files. So post this webinar, definitely check it out. And for those of you who did this diagnostic question, how many of you did do the diagnostic question that was there on the post-registration page? How many of you did that diagnostic question on the post-registration page? All right. For those of you who did not do this, and you can do it here in the diagnostic solution. And for those of you who need the solution, you can also click over here to get the solution as well. And if you need help with any of this, you can always write to me at, let me put my email address here, write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. All right. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to hide this as well. With that, we have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on algebra. This is inequalities and absolute value. That is tomorrow. For those of you who want to register for this webinar, you can click on this register now button. In this, we'll start from the very basics of inequalities, and then go on to solving some of the most challenging data sufficiency questions. And then next week, exactly a week from now, we have a webinar on GMAT RC. It's designed for students who are looking for that 90th percentile score, but are not voracious readers. So essentially, we demonstrate certain reading strategies, or we talk about certain reading strategies, we demonstrate those strategies, and solve some of the most challenging passages that the test will throw at you. Okay, let me hide this. With this, I have a couple of other poll questions as well. When do you plan to take the test? And then I have a question around what is your target GMAT score. Now, this one is more geared towards the current GMAT, but if you're aiming for the Focus Edition, just select the score with the equivalent percentile. So if you're aiming for that 96 percentile, choose 730 to 750. That's also a 675 equivalent. If you're aiming for 705, choose 760, and so on and so forth. 700 to 710 is 655. 660 to 700 is 615 to 645. All right, let's get a few more responses. So about 40% of the class is in the 730 to 750 bracket, 25% in that 760 or higher, and then we have about 22%, very similar number in the 710, 720, and about 12% of the class in the 660 to 700 bracket. Let me hide this. And with regards to when do people plan to take their test, Many of you haven't taken a data as of yet. That's about 40%. And then we have 46 to 75, another 22% over here. And then about half the class is in the 31 to 0 to 45 days. A few folks who have their GMAT right away within the next 15 days. Now, if you apply the methods that we will talk about today for another 15 to 20 hours, you're going to be able to see a significant improvement in your CR ability. But it does need that investment of about 15 to 20 hours or so. And this is especially for those who have your exam in the next 15 days. With that, let me go into the webinar pane. As the screen settles down, you will see a presentation that says CR1, Prethinking for Assumptions. So this entire pane has three areas. You have the presentation. This is where you'll have the central presentation. I'm going to talk to it. It'll have helpful information for me and for you so that we talk of a single reference. Below the presentation is a Q&A or a question and answer part. I'm moving that part over here. If you have a question, you can post that question here. That way it goes in a queue. It doesn't get lost. On the right-hand side, we have a short answer part. This is where I put my questions and you put in your answers. And throughout this webinar, I'm going to pose about 100 questions or so, and the webinar is about 2 hours long. So we'll have a question every minute or so. In a few minutes, in some cases, we'll have 2 questions a minute or so. But overall, about 100 questions, and then this is where I'd like to get your answers in there. Okay. So with that, let's go right into the webinar pane. So just the overall agenda. We'll talk about how you currently approach assumption questions. This is where discussing your current approaches in this case. Then we'll do pre-thinking. Let me hide this. Is this useful for those who have the GMAT in 15 to 20 days? Absolutely. If you need help on critical reasoning, yes, it's going to be useful. As I said, you need about 15 to 20 hours of investment. So it's just this webinar by itself won't be useful. Again, remember, anything that's worth doing requires skill building. Skill building requires reinforcement. So if you can spend 15 to 20 hours building on what we learned in this webinar, you're going to find it incredibly useful, especially if you need help in critical reasoning. Okay. So we're going to look at how you currently approach CR questions. Then we will actually do a pre-thinking exercise where essentially we're going to look at 3 arguments. The first 2 would be pure arguments, no answer choices. The third one would be a full-length question. The goal over here is to build on the core skills and to kind of understand that pre-thinking approach. Then we're going to apply that approach on 2 full-length questions. These questions are 700 level. In fact, these are some of the hardest questions that you're going to face on the GMAT. And then from there on, we're going to really say, okay, how can you build on this approach? Where can you spend those 10 to 15 hours? And what metrics should you be tracking? And then you're going to really just, if you're an e-GMAT student, you're going to talk about the role of each of the learning activities which are there in the e-GMAT course and how they help you build these skills. And again, we're going to translate those metrics into the metrics on these learning activities. Okay. So shortly, and to summarize, we're going to document how you're preparing. We're going to look at why this is important or why pre-thinking is important, and then we're going to talk about the next steps. Okay. All right. Focus edition, I'd love to tell you, we probably published more on GMAT focus edition than anyone else has, and we're going to publish a landmark research fairly soon as in the next couple of days as well. But again, guys, this is webinar about pre-thinking. So if you have questions about the focus edition, I'd recommend that you hold those questions towards the end of the webinar, and I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Otherwise, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and ask me those questions, or write an email to me, and I'd be happy to do that as well. Again, that way we stay focused on what our goal is. We get through this webinar in a couple of hours, and then after that, I will reserve about 20 minutes to answer any personal question, not just about the focus edition, but also about your profile, which schools you should apply to. If you have questions about, how to prepare if you are in a certain situation, I'd be happy to address that as well. So again, let's hold that till the end of the webinar. Okay. So with that, let's talk about your current approach to to GMAT CR. So I'm going to put in 2 poll questions here. So essentially, when you think about, okay, before we do that, I want to talk about what pre-thinking is, because it's a fairly misunderstood term. e-GMAT, but in 2011, we actually coined this term pre-thinking. And what it is, you know, when you think about an argument, you think of one potential answer choice, whether it's a strength or a weakness, an assumption or an evaluate answer choice, in 15 seconds before looking at answer choices. So the goal of pre-thinking is to ensure that you synthesize the information that's given to you in a fairly precise manner. And when you do that, your research has shown that you know, you're much more likely to answer the question correctly. We were the first company to really come up with this term, to define this term. And the reason why a lot of people misunderstand this is because what they think that this is e-GMAT, what pre-thinking is predicting the answer. So just to really tell you, pre-thinking is not predicting the answer. Pre-thinking is merely a litmus test to ensure that you understand the information given in the argument. Okay, so which methodology do you follow while solving CR questions today? Methodology 1 is you read the argument, you go to the answer choices, and you come back to the argument, do that back and forth till you reach the final candidate. Methodology 2 is you read the argument, you pre-think an assumption, and then evaluate the answer choices. I have a poll question. I want you to tell me, which methodology do you follow today? Let's get a few more responses. I have about 70 responses as of now. Let's get to about 90. I have about 134 students in the webinar. 78, 80. All right, let me end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results. So about 54% of you follow methodology 1, where you do the back and forth. 46% of you follow methodology 2, which is the pre-thinking approach. For those of you who follow methodology 1, hopefully by the end of this webinar, you will give pre-thinking a fair chance and try and adopt it. For those of you who follow methodology 2, I want to make sure that you become better pre-thinkers. And you kind of understand what's important if you want to succeed while doing pre-thinking. Now, pre-thinking is not an end-all. So it's not a magic bullet which will help you get to every question. It requires a certain foundation. And what are those and this slide describes what those foundational skills are. One of the most important skills in the context of GMAT verbal is the ability to visualize information. So visualization means when you read a piece of information with a single sentence, you kind of imagine it happening in front of your eyes. If the sentence says, hey, the seawall is going to sustain the highways from the hurricane, I want you to imagine the hurricane. I want to imagine the seawall. I want to imagine the seawall, which is tall. And then regardless of the height, it's able to block the waves. Now, if it's a weekend question, I want you to imagine slightly a different scenario where, you know, it's a very tall wall, but I want you to ask the question, given the information in the argument, how could some walls, you know, some water get through? So that's visualization. Okay. The second skill is the logic that the author uses to arrive at the conclusion. And that's something which is really important, because you know, when you think about an argument, all CR questions are a test of logic. So it's really important to build that logical structure of the argument and then move forward. And then once we do 1 and we do 2, we can then really talk about pre-thinking and formulate that falsification question. Okay. The question says, Bloomberg edition course says that we need to read the question first to understand how to read the argument. Not really. The argument is the argument. Yes, reading the question first helps you slightly with regards to the timing aspect of it, but it also overwhelms you many a time. So depending on where you are, you know, you may. So in our research, reading the question first saves you about 5 seconds overall in solving the question, which again is not incredible, but then it also has the potential to overwhelm you. So depending on who you are, you can do one way or the other. There's no significant difference in your ability estimate that you can really see. And we do a lot of research in when it comes to the GMAT, which is why we account for about 60% of all 700 plus scores reported on GMAT Club. Okay. All right. With that, why don't you tell me what an assumption is? And one of the first things that we're going to do is I'm going to give you a very simple argument first, and I want you to tell me what an assumption is. Okay. So here's a simple argument. Tell me what an assumption is. All right. I have about 18, 20 answers. 22. Let me broadcast results so you guys can read that. Okay, guys, put your answers in the short answer pod on the right-hand side and put your questions in the Q&A pod. Okay, don't put your answers in the Q&A pod because that's a place for your questions. All right. So a lot of you have gotten a really great answer. Ivy League colleges don't consider scores below 500 or 500 is not enough to get admission into an Ivy League college. 500 is not good enough to get into Ivy League college. Okay. All right. So let's see what's happening in this argument. So what the author says is, hey, Joe scored a score of 500. So there's a data point that the author provides. Based on that data point, what the author says is that makes a prediction that Joe will not get into an Ivy League college. This is a future-looking prediction. Okay. And when he does that, he has an assumption. What's the assumption? The assumption is that a score of 500 for someone like Joe is unacceptable to Ivy League colleges. And most of you got this. Why? Because as humans, it's natural for us to come up with assumptions as long as we understand the argument, as long as we can visualize the argument. And this is one argument that you probably think about, or this one context that you probably think about day in and day out. So for you, this was fairly easy to visualize. So again, my point with this fairly simple argument was to really tell you, if you visualize information, pre-thinking is a very natural process for us as humans. Now, one aspect of it, an assumption is always linked to the conclusion. And since the conclusion says Joe will not get into an Ivy League college, therefore the assumption has to have this piece, which is someone like Joe. All right. With that, why don't you tell me what's the definition of an assumption? Type out the definition of an assumption. I'm going to remove broadcast results, type your answers in, press enter. And as you press enter, I'm going to get that information. But you won't see it till I broadcast results. But be rest assured, your information is stored in the system. I have about 4 answers, 5 answers, 8, 9 answers, about 12 answers, 18. Great. Let me broadcast results so that you guys can see that. Statement without which an argument fails. What links premises and conclusion? Something that is true but not indicated. The hypothesis behind the conclusion. Okay. Your guess about logical links. All right. Interesting. A statement for which the conclusion holds true. All right. So you can really see there are, there's this lots of different ways in which you guys are thinking about assumptions. Some of those are very precise. Others are not as precise. But everyone or most of you have a common understanding of the fact that an assumption has to do with the conclusion. An assumption has to do with the logic in the argument. Okay. So let's kind of look at what is the formal definition of an assumption. An assumption is an unstated idea that must be true for the conclusion to be valid. Okay. So when you think about this, and this is, I usually don't like tell people to write things down. In this entire webinar, I'm going to ask you to write 2 things down. This is one of those 2. If you truly understand the definition of an assumption, you'd be able to answer every question. You'll be able to reject every incorrect answer choice, no matter how tempting it is. So write it down, because whenever you see a tempting answer choice, if you recite the definition of an assumption and you've truly understood the information in the argument, you'd be able to reject it. Okay, this is one of those Newton laws of motion where If you know this, you can actually do big things with it. So there are two characteristics of an assumption. One is that it provides new information, which means information that can't be inferred from the factual part of the argument. And the second thing is that it satisfies this one condition, that is that must be true condition. Now, 95% of the questions would play on this must be true aspect. So this is where most of the challenging questions are there as well. But 5% of the questions will play on this new information. And these questions essentially are rare, but they do exist. Okay. Now, again, write this down. We're going to really look at this. So we're going to focus a lot of our attention on what is this must be true. And you're going to find that pre-thinking as a process is also built around this must be true aspect of the assumption. So at e-GMAT, we're big on visualizing information. So let's kind of visualize this. So think of this entire argument as this house or this hut, which is supported by these three pillars. And each of these three pillars is a supporting statement. The roof is my conclusion as is stated over here. Okay. Now, let's call these pillars 1, 2, and 3. Now, let's understand what is this must be true. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to remove pillar 1. As we remove pillar 1, the roof does weaken, but it stays upright. This means pillar 1 is not an assumption. Let's remove pillar 3 as well. Again, the roof is further weakened, but it still stays upright. It doesn't break down. So pillar 3 is also not an assumption. Both these pillars 1 and 3, they are strengtheners. They make the roof stronger. They make the conclusion stronger, but they're not essential pillars. Okay. Let's bring back pillars 1 and 3, and now remove pillar 2, and the roof caves in. This is what makes pillar 2 as an assumption. It is that must be true pillar, without which, in the current design of my argument, my roof cannot stay upright. Does that help you visualize in an abstract sense what an assumption is? All right, perfect. Now, when you see complex, sophisticated arguments, and when you really see those confusing answer choices, the answer choices that seem tempting are like these supporting pillars. There'll be good strengtheners, even great strengtheners, and we're going to do the third argument that we'll do today will be one such argument, but they will not satisfy the must be true condition. So those confusing answer choices would be like pillars 1 and 3. The correct answer is always like pillar 2. Okay. So what does must be true mean? It means that if the information provided by the assumption is not true, then the conclusion can no longer hold true. Or, which you get back to that very definition of an assumption. The assumption must be true for the conclusion to be valid. Okay, if you see that as multiple assumptions, the person who's saying that, I think we need to really think about your ability to visualize, Rohit. So yeah. So because then whatever information that I'm telling you, which is, hey, you remove pillar 1, the roof stays upright, you're not seeing that, you're seeing something else. All right. So with that, let's kind of talk about what does falsification of conclusion mean. Same argument over here. And so what does falsification or destroying the conclusion mean? In what scenario is the conclusion destroyed? If Joe gets admission with that score of 500, my conclusion breaks down. Everyone gets that? My conclusion is destroyed in a scenario where Joe gets admission with a score of 500. Why? Because the author says Joe will not get admission in an Ivy League college. Yes, a few more yeses would be nice. Perfect. All right, so let's kind of figure out how to evaluate whether an answer choice is correct. Okay, so I'm going to go through this process. It will feel very laborious, but then as you follow this process again and again, it will become second nature. So bear with me for some more time. So let's take an answer choice that we said is our correct assumption. A score of 500 on the GMAT for someone like Joe is unacceptable to Ivy League colleges. So if you have to evaluate this answer choice and say, is this a correct assumption? You're going to ask this question. Does it satisfy the must be true condition? Or in other words, will Joe get admission if this information is no longer true? Now, listen to this carefully. If the information on the left is no longer true, what it means automatically is that its negated version becomes true. So what it means is if we say, hey, if this information is no longer true, then what we are saying is, by definition, its negated version becomes true, which means a score of 500 on the GMAT becomes acceptable to Ivy League schools. So what happens if this happens? If a score of 500 becomes acceptable, what happens to my conclusion? Does it break down? Absolutely. Why? Because if a score of 500 becomes acceptable, then I, as an author, cannot say with 100% certainty that Joe will not get into an Ivy League college. So which is what makes this the correct assumption. Now, some of you may be saying, hey, Rajat, how can you say that if I'm saying this statement is not true, I'm automatically saying its negated version is true? Let's kind of see some examples. If you say, take a statement, Harvard has the best MBA program, and you say that's not true, what it automatically means is that Harvard does not have the best MBA program. You're also saying this. Or you're also saying that an MBA program which is just as good as Harvard or better than Harvard exists. Isn't that true? When you say this statement is not true, you are automatically saying that this is true, correct? Right? Let's take another statement. John runs faster than David. If you say this is not true, what you're automatically saying is that John does not run faster than David, or David is just as fast, or in fact, David could even be faster than John. So when you say a statement is not must be true, what you're automatically saying is that its negated version is true. You believe that its negated version is true. Okay. And that's the obvious inference, by the way. So this is what must be true is. If an answer choice is must be true, then the conclusion will break down in the presence of its negated version. Why? Because it comes from that very definition of an assumption that it's an unstated idea that must be true for the conclusion to hold valid. In other words, if we remove that pillar number 2, the roof will cave in. Right? That's the very definition of an essential pillar or a must be true pillar. Okay. It also cuts the other way, which is that if an answer choice is an incorrect answer choice, then nothing will happen to the conclusion in the presence of that negated instance of that answer choice. This could be as tempting an answer choice as possible. But if it's an incorrect answer choice, if it's not a must be true answer choice, you can negate it and your conclusion will stay extremely strong. Let's take a couple of examples here. We're going to evaluate this answer choice. Same argument here. A score of 500 on the GMAT is not a good score. Let's see what happens to this answer choice. Can I go back to the previous slide? Yeah. Yeah. You can write it down. I'm going to share the PDF with you as well towards the end. I'm going to repeat this part about 4 times. We're going to have 4 examples. Okay. Let's go back to this. So a score of 500 on the GMAT is not a good score. And let's evaluate this using the same process. Now, I know this is an obvious answer choice. Many people can reject it without going through this process. And this is a fairly easy example. But the reason why I have this example is because once you understand the process on this example, you're going to be able to apply it and you're going to demonstrate it on much more challenging examples. So let's ask this. Is this must be true? Which means the question that we are asking is still the same. Will the conclusion become invalid or Joe get admission if this statement is no longer true? So if you say this statement is no longer true, its negated instance becomes true. It means a score of 500 becomes a good score. Now, what happens if a score of 500 becomes a good score? Does Joe get admission? Absolutely not. Why? Because as per the argument, the conclusion is not predicated on the fact as to whether you call this score a good or a bad or an absurd score. In other words, if you replace 500 by 700, even then the logic of the argument remains the same. Okay, so which means that, hey, this, whether you call it a good, bad, excellent, that doesn't do anything to the argument, because the author is simply saying Joe scored a certain number on the GMAT. Therefore, he's not going to get admission into an Ivy League school. Okay, let's look at another answer choice here. The quality of an applicant's essays does not play a significant role in deciding whether he gets into an Ivy League school or Ivy League college. Let's see, is this a must be true statement? Is this the correct answer? We're going to ask the same question. Will the conclusion become invalid? Will Joe get admission if this statement is no longer true? Okay. So when we say if this statement is no longer true, then its negated version becomes true, which means the quality of applicants' essays starts to play a significant role. Now, will Joe get admission into an Ivy League college if that happens? No, absolutely not. Why? Because if he doesn't meet the minimum threshold, it won't matter how good an essay does he provide. Okay, there he has to meet that minimum threshold before those essays can start to matter. Okay, so Anirudh says, any markers to know if something is tempting but wrong? No, Anirudh, I'm sorry. There are, it's not like conclusion markers where you can really figure out what the conclusion is. So there are no markers to know whether something is a tempting but incorrect answer choice. And remember this, in CR, a formulaic approach doesn't work when it gets to 700 level questions. And the reason why most of you are here is because you want to get to 700 level questions. All right. Ella says, can you come again with the explanation? So, Ella, step one, what did we do? We really said, in what scenario will my conclusion break down? Understand that. If you don't understand that, you don't have an understanding of the argument. Then, as you're evaluating the answer choices, ask yourself, is that must be true? Is the information in this answer choice required for my conclusion to hold true? And to do that, to answer that question, what you have to do is you really say, okay, what happens if the negated version of this answer choice is true? And if that's true, what happens to my conclusion? If nothing happens to your conclusion, it's the incorrect answer choice. If your conclusion breaks down, then it's the correct answer choice. And there are only these two states that are possible. Okay. Again, we're going to repeat this about 4 times. And again, even if 30% of you are getting this now, by the time we get to the end of this webinar, 90+% of you will get this perfectly. Okay. You're welcome, Ella. Great questions. So again, the skills that we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on visualization. If you don't visualize information, you won't be able to build that logical structure. If you don't build that logical structure, then you won't be able to formulate that falsification question. So again, learning these skills in sequence is really important. Now, the skill of visualization is really important, regardless of whether you're talking about CR or RC or even data insights for those of you who are looking at the focus edition. We're looking at the current GMAT. As you get to those 700 level meaning-based essay questions, again, that the skill of visualize will come in handy. So it's not something that you need just for critical reasoning. It's something that you need for each of these 3 sections. Okay. Again, just to summarize, for the correct answer choice, the conclusion will break down when you negate in the presence of the negated version of that correct one. For the incorrect answer choice, nothing's going to happen to the conclusion. So in a nutshell, Anirudh says if the negated version of a statement causes the conclusion to fall apart, that would be the answer. Absolutely, Anirudh. Now you're getting it. And it's nice when you're summarizing this in your own words, because this shows that you are starting to get this. All right. So this was a simple question. This was just a brief introduction to what an assumption is, because many of you don't know that. So think of this as cleansing the palate. Now we're going to do a pre-thinking exercise. I'm going to give you just one argument, no answer choices. I'm going to give you 3 minutes, so ample time. And I want you to write down your pre-thinking here. So make sure you have a glass of water. Make sure you have a pen and paper, because I want you to write things down. I want you to go slow. The key to success on the GMAT is going slow. Okay, going slow and comprehending and visualizing. As long as you do these 3 things, you're going to get most of the answers correct. You're not going to fall short on time. Okay. So this is the process that we're going to follow. I'm going to give you an argument. You're going to put in your pre-thinking. Then I'm going to go through how I would go about pre-thinking in this particular argument. And then we may evaluate a couple of submissions. Okay. So are you guys ready? Do you have a glass of water? Do you have a pen and paper? All right. With that, I'm going to remove broadcast results. I'm going to mute myself for the next 3 minutes. And I'm going to clear this. So here is your argument. Good luck, guys. Hey, Siri. Set a time for 3 minutes. All right, guys, type your answers in and press enter if you're done. Hey Siri. Hey Siri, show my timer. All right, guys, you have another 30 seconds. Get those answers in. I have about 10 answers so far. Five, four. Make sure you press enter whatever you've typed. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to broadcast results. All right, so you guys can see what others have put in over here. I have some really good answers and some answers where you've kind of repeated the information from the argument. So that's there. There are some people who are thinking, I can see people visualizing this, but they've not confined their visualization to the argument itself. But I've also see a lot of people putting that effort in visualizing, which actually makes me really, really happy. Because if you're putting in the effort, then it's much easier to channelize that energy in the right direction. Okay. So I'll give you the opportunity to look at this. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to visualize information here. We're going to look at the conclusion, then we're going to visualize it. Then we're going to build that logical structure, and then we're going to ask that pre-thinking question. So the purpose of this argument is to introduce you to the process of pre-thinking. The purpose of the first question was to introduce you to what an assumption is. Now that you know what an assumption is, let's kind of introduce pre-thinking to you. Now, what's the falsification method, or what is the pre-thinking question? It's built around that very definition of an assumption, which is where the assumption is, and it's an unstated idea that must be true for the conclusion to be valid. Okay. So what it means is that without an assumption, the conclusion will fall apart. I mean, if you think about that house example, if you remove pillar number 2, the roof will cave in. Okay. In other words, assumptions are built around scenarios where the conclusion breaks down or where the roof caves in. So if we have to figure out assumptions, we have to figure out scenarios where the conclusion breaks down. It may be similar to if you were to build a house and you were to really say, where should I put pillars? Kind of figure out where my roof's caving in my current architecture, and then put pillars over there so the roof does not cave in. That's essentially the whole process of pre-thinking. Okay. So what is that pre-thinking question that we're going to ask? It's going to say, under what circumstances, given the information in the argument, will my conclusion break down? This is the generic form of pre-thinking question, and it will work for every argument, whether it's causal, whether it's predictive, whether it's just something that says that this happens. Okay. This is the second thing that I want you to write down. This is the last thing that you need to write down in this webinar. So write this down, because this question, regardless of the kind of argument that you face, would remain the same. Why should you break the conclusion? Because that's the job of an assumption. It prevents that conclusion from breaking down. So if you want to figure out where to put an assumption, or what should an assumption be, figure out where does the conclusion break down. Why? Because that's where you need an assumption. I mean, think of an assumption as something that fixes a set of vulnerabilities in your argument. So if you want to really figure out where to plug those vulnerabilities, try to kind of break that system, and wherever you see you can break that system, that's where you need to plug a vulnerability. Okay, let's look at this particular argument over here. Now, why don't you tell me which of these 3 statements is the main conclusion? I'm going to I'm going to begin a poll question. Which statement is the main conclusion? All right, while you guys are, I want to get about 80 answers, guys. Which of these three statements? It's the same argument, just divided this into three statements. Which of these three statements is the main conclusion? I have about 40 answers. Let's get to 80 answers. I have 120 odd students in the webinar. $67 answers, 70 answers. Let's get 10 more. All right, 78. I have 80 responses. Thank you. Again, guys, if you're here, if you're spending time, participate. Why? Because, if you get the answer right, so first of all, participation means you're going to tax your brain. And you're here, you should tax your brain. This is not an easy webinar to be in. This is not, watching a soap opera. If it were, then I'd be really ineffective in what I'm doing. So if you participate, two things can happen. You get it right, which means you're thinking in the right direction. It's a reinforcement of your thought process. Or you get it wrong, which means you know where you need to improve. Once you know where you need to improve, improvement is a lot easier. Okay. So let's look at this. 51% or 42 of you think statement 2 is the main conclusion, and you guys are absolutely correct. Statement 2 is indeed the main conclusion. But then you can really see, but half the class thinks either statement 1 or statement 3 is the main conclusion. Okay, so let's figure out why statement 2 is the main conclusion. The job of the main conclusion is to really say, why has the author written this argument? And when you think about why the author has written this argument, you're going to really see it is to further this belief that the difference between professors in the tenure system and other full-time lecturers is because of the reward system, or it has to do with the reward system for the professors. Okay, for the former is really important over here. Okay, now what does statement 3 do? What's the job of statement 3? Statement 3 makes statement 2 more believable. Can you guys see that? It supports statement 2, yes. So which means statement 3 cannot be the main conclusion. Okay. A lot of people think statement 1 is the main conclusion because it has the word concludes. How many people thought 1 is the main conclusion because this one word concludes? How many people thought 1 is MC because of this? Now, a lot of people who think that, I know this because I've done this webinar about 40 times, and each webinar is about 140, 150 people. So you're looking at about 6,000 students or so. Okay. Now, statement 1 has a conclusion, but it is by a research paper. Okay. It's not by the author of the argument. Remember, the main conclusion is always by the author of the argument. The author of the argument uses this paper as context or as fact to arrive at his conclusion. So in many ways, this also supports the conclusion, or it provides context. Okay. It is evidence. So a statement can be a premise. It can be evidence. What is evidence? Evidence is a piece of information used to arrive at a conclusion. What is a premise? A premise is a statement that supports the conclusion. If you're building a conclusion based on evidence, this means the evidence by itself is a premise. Okay. Is that clear, Anirudh? Okay. All right. Let's move forward. So statement 1 is your main conclusion. Sorry, statement 2 is your main conclusion, which is this over here. Okay. Now, let's visualize this conclusion. And one thing which is really, really important is that the author is not disputing the report's finding. He's actually blaming the reward system. In many ways, he's explaining the conclusion's findings. So if you were to visualize this, so what it's saying is tenured professors actually help 40% of the students. Full-time lecturers help 70% of the students do significantly better overall. And this is because of the reward system for this entity, which is tenured professors. Okay. All right. Now, I want to ask you this one thing over here, which is about statement 3. We're going to focus on statement 3. I'm going to ask a poll question here. Whose reward system does statement 3 talk about? Again, this is statement 3. Whose reward system does statement 3 talk about? Again, I'm looking for 80 answers here, guys. The options are just tenured faculty or only tenured faculty, only lecturers, both, or neither. Come on, I have 33 answers. I have 42 answers. Whose reward system does statement 3 talk about? I have 65 answers. 70, 75, 80 plus answers. We end the poll, broadcast the results. All right, 69% of you say only tenured faculty. You're absolutely right. But again, you can see 25% of people are saying both tenured faculty and lecturers. A lot of people see this word greater and are confused and say, hey, maybe we are comparing tenured faculty as well as lecturers. But that's not what it's comparing. It's comparing the emphasis on research versus the emphasis on teaching. It's saying for tenured faculty, maybe there's a 70% emphasis on research and 30% emphasis on teaching. Okay, greater means there's a bigger chunk on research and a smaller chunk on teaching. And it's really important to put numbers. You could put 70-30, 75-25, 60-40, whatever makes sense for you. Doesn't have to be a specific number. But always put emphasis over here. And doing this is really important. And for me, asking these questions is really important. Why? Because every misunderstanding shows a gap in your understanding, in how you perceive the argument. And when you do that, it's a potential for you making a mistake, or it's an area that we need to improve on. Okay. So just in terms of the structure of this argument, this is the main conclusion. This provides context here, and this is the supporting statement, which supports the main conclusion overall. Okay. So the pre-thinking question, again, remember, this was the pre-thinking question. Anirudh, you wanted this. This is the generic template. Under what circumstances, given the facts and the argument, will the conclusion break down? So it has two fill in the blanks here. One is the facts and the argument. Two is the conclusion breakdown criteria. We're going to translate each of these parts into, take the information from the argument and fill in the blanks over here for 1 and 2. Under what circumstances will the reward system not be responsible? So this is 2. And this is 2. Can you see the conclusion breakdown criteria to the reward system not be responsible translation? 2:2. Can you guys see this? How we translated conclusion breakdown to reward system not be responsible? Can you see this? This is a yes no question, guys. Okay, few more yeses. Can you see how the conclusion breakdown criteria is mapped to the reward system not be translated to the reward system not be responsible? Okay. Okay, now we're going to look at 1 and we're going to map it to the facts and the argument. So this is 1 and this both is 1 over here. What are the facts and the argument? Full-time lecturers do a better job, and reward systems for lecture professors places a greater emphasis on research than on teaching. Okay. Again, this is 2 and this is 2 over here. This entire piece is 2. Okay. Now there's an answer to say the data set is an unbiased data set. You know, that's one of the easiest ways to break an argument down. It's a correct answer, but not something that you're going to see in a CR question, especially that's 600 level or above. Why? Because the easiest way to break the argument down is to really say, hey, the basis of the argument is wrong. Okay. All right. So what's the pre-thinking question or the falsification question? Under what conditions will the reward system not cause the difference between the tenured and non-tenured faculty? Again, remember, we are not disputing the findings of the paper. We are just trying to explain those findings. Okay. There are two possible scenarios that I can think of. One is if non-tenured faculty has an identical reward system. Can you see that? If we find that tenured and non-tenured, they have an identical reward system, then we can't blame the reward system. Correct? If tenured versus non-tenured, identical reward system, then it's not the reward system. Why? Because non-tenured would have behaved the same way. What if most professors don't act as per the reward system? Then also we can't blame the reward system. In both these scenarios, my conclusion breaks down. Right? If either one of these scenarios is true, then my conclusion breaks down. So what are my assumptions? Non-tenured faculty should not have an identical reward system. Most tenured professors should act as per the reward system. These are two good assumptions. Each one of them is correct in its own way. Think about it. Okay. And this is something that we're going to repeat 3 more times. The entire process, this entire session is about building visualization. It's about applying this process again and again so that you get into the habit of doing so. Okay. But can you really see that when you go through this entire process methodically, first visualize the information in the argument. Make sure you visualize every sentence. Then build that logical structure and then ask that pre-thinking question. You will be able to, once you start doing that, you start arriving at falsification scenarios. And once you do that, you'll be able to come up with good answers. Okay. Now, how many of you are worried about timing? Think, man, this is good, this is logical, but this will take a lot of time. All right. I need a bit more participation. OMG me. Okay. Good. Let me just state a fact here. And this is something you can go and verify. You go on GMAT Club, look at the last 3 years, look at the last 10 years. What you're going to find is 60% of all 700 plus scores reported in their review section are reported by e-GMATers. 40% are reported by all the other prep companies combined. So one thing which is there is if this process didn't work, we would not have these stats here. And trust me, all of these companies combined have about 4x as many students. Okay. Now, here's another thing that you'd really learn, which is that, and some of you probably know this, when you learn something new, you always take longer to do it. How many of you have learned something new and mastered it in the last 12 months or 2 years? 12 to 24 months. How many of you have done that? Okay. The process of learning something new means that you will need to build new connections in your brain. And whether those connections are about a certain area, or learning more about a certain area, or doing things using a new process. It will seem laborious. And if it doesn't seem laborious, then you're probably not learning something which is significantly new. And that's something which is there. That's the same thing that's going to happen in the context of these questions. So let's say you're someone who, this is the accuracy chart, this is the time chart. So you're someone who's starting at this point number 1. The moment you start using pre-thinking, you're going to spend more time understanding the argument and visualizing the argument. It's something you haven't done before. You're going to spend time building that logical structure. This is something you've not done before. So one of the first things that's going to happen is you're going to take longer to arrive at the answers, and your accuracy is going to go up. Okay. So some of you would be like this person saying, what the hell am I doing using this process? I'm already worried about timing and I'm taking longer to do this. How many of you think would fall in this camp, the guy who starts to worry as you start to take longer? Don't. Because frankly, if you're not taking longer to learn to do something, then you're not learning anything, which means you're not going to have an improvement. Okay. So trust the process. And then the thing which is there as humans is, even though as we are doing this, we feel we're getting a better handle on this, we see that our accuracy is going up. You can see as you're going from 1 to 2, I'm going higher on the y-axis, so my accuracy is going to go up. People will see that, yet they start to really fall out at this point. Okay. Now, as you continue to do this, as you continue to follow this process, a few things are going to happen. One, you're going to really see repeated structures and arguments, which means your ability to visualize information is going to improve. Two, as you solve 10, 15, 20 questions and you attempt to visualize information, you're going to you're going to get better with every question that you do. But then with every mistake that you make, you're going to go look at the solution, see how you should have actually visualized it, and then you're going to improve, which means not only will you build those neural connections which make you automatically go towards visualization, your visualization of words is also going to improve, which means those visualizations will start to become more vivid. When both of those things happen, your time shrinks drastically because you go through the building that logical structure a lot easier, and then you reject answer choices much more quickly. So after 20 odd questions, you're going to really start seeing that improvement where your accuracy continues to improve, but your time to answer questions actually goes down. You can really see 3 is towards the left of 1. This is where, for those of your engineers, you'd reach what I call as pre-thinking hysteresis. Once you do this, you're not going to get out of this. You can only get better from here. This is what I call as the 30th percentile point. This is what I call as the 40th to 50th percentile point. This is around that 70th. And this is where you go from 80th to 99th percentile point overall. Okay. So Soha says, how much does confidence help you with speed? Great question. And it's a great question because I have to look back, think back. So what confidence does in any process, and this is something that you guys probably have experienced in your life, is that it makes you follow the process. It makes you trust the process. It prevents you from getting distracted. Confidence does not automatically help you in speed, but because you follow the process and you follow the process again and again and again, and because you don't get distracted, you get to the success rate faster. That's what confidence does. Okay. So the other thing that I want to tell you is none of this is rocket science. Let me be very clear. I run a GMAT prep company, and if this were rocket science, I'd be happy. But I want to tell you, this is not rocket science. Why? Because each one of you out there can do it. All right. And so but it requires people to be diligent. If you're not diligent, if you're not following a certain sequence of learning, you're going to get lost. You're going to stay stuck. You're going to go in random directions, and you're going to find, months have gone by and you've not progressed half as much or even a third as much as you thought you would progress. Has anyone experienced this? I've been studying for months but have not had progress. Okay. Most people who've been studying for months have not progressed worry about their GMAT score. Their attitude is, how can I get better? How can I score higher? How can I score higher? Am I wrong in saying that? No. So, and because I've seen thousands of students, people who actually get there in 2 months don't worry about their score. They worry about, am I learning? Did I visualize information correctly? Because they believe the score is an outcome. You don't study for a certain score. You study to learn. And as you learn, that score happens automatically. When does e-GMAT introduce the focus edition version? It's already there. Log into your e-GMAT account. You'll see data insights. It's there. Okay. So when it comes to the GMAT, focus on building skills. And if it takes longer, that's okay because you are building skills. As long as there are 3 things happening, taking longer is okay. One is you're getting better clarity about solving questions. The second is you're spending less time deciphering between answer choices. and you're spending more time on the original prompt. As long as those two things are happening, you're moving in the right direction. Okay. Here is some feedback from some of our students, and if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, do that, because we have the world's largest collection of success stories. In fact, every other GMAT prep channel combined, if you take it, every other company's channel, they won't have as many success stories and as many scholarship stories as we do. Okay. So this student says, understand the passage completely. Take your time. Equally important, pre-think an answer before looking at the answer choice. Here's a guy who improved from 30th percentile to 97th percentile in 20 days. He had the right fundamentals. He wasn't just following the right process. He was just going to the answer choices without spending enough time on the argument. It says answer CR questions as if there are no answer choices. Pre-thinking is a game changer. When it gets to 700 level questions, you have to do pre-thinking. Why? Because it helps you focus on the logic and not deviate from the key argument from when trap or out of scope answer choices come in. Okay. This pre-thinking primes the mind, and we are constantly on our toes while reading an RC paragraph or a CR question stem. Apart from comprehending the passage, we keep on speculating that in which direction the passage will orient or what logical jump has the author taken. Here's a guy who went from 520 to 740. Okay. Again, you can see accuracy and time both go up. Accuracy continues to go up, time goes down drastically. Accuracy continues to go up, time goes down drastically. Soha says, how can I predict my strengths and weaknesses while I'm totally new even to the test format? I need time. Great question. So essentially Soha's question is, to predict my strengths and weaknesses, I'm going to take a mock. And essentially, if I'm new to the format, how can you do that? Again, remember, Soha, especially in the e-GMAT world, when you build a study plan, we want to compare like individuals. And so when you take an initial mock, one thing that we recommend is make sure you solve 20 verbal questions, 20 quant questions, so you're reasonably familiar with the format. And then take a mock test. Now, the e-GMAT mock test gives you percentiles in SC, CR, RC, arithmetic, and algebra. And what these tell you are your natural strengths and your natural weaknesses. Now, why is it important for us to know your natural strengths and your natural weaknesses? Because it helps us build that personalized study plan for you. Let's say your starting ability in CR is 40th percentile, and your starting ability in SC is 25th percentile. So what this tells us is that given who you are, it's much easier for you to go from a 40th percentile, and it's much easier for you to go from in CR to a 90th percentile than it is in SC. Okay, you're likely to take twice as long to go from a 20th to a 90th percentile. Why? Just because, or 25th to a 90th percentile, just because you don't have a natural ability in it. Doesn't mean you can't go, but it's going to take twice as long, both in terms of time and in terms of your persistence to do this. And we as humans lose patience. So if we were to carve a path to a V40 score for you, I would actually make you get a higher ability score in CR than in SC if I can make you do that. And that's where that initial mock is really essential. It tells us your natural strengths and weaknesses. Okay. It's very similar to, let's say you were going to learn how to play squash or you were going to learn how to play tennis. A coach will assess your natural swing. Why? Because it will tell you the muscles that you've been building all your life, where does a big chunk, where do those muscles reside, in which motion are you likely to be stronger at, and accordingly the coach will build your game so that it's built around your strengths. Of course, yes, you have to tackle your weaknesses, but then your strengths are what your strengths are. When should you attempt a Sigma X mock? Let's hold that question towards the end because it'll digress us if I answer that question. Okay. Shri says, how many questions do you need to go? 20 questions. Okay. All right. Bottom line is, if you're not taking longer, then you're not learning anything substantial. All right. With that, so this question here, can you discuss other essential CR strategies? There are very few concepts in CR. Okay. We're going to focus just on assumption, but we're going to focus on core skills, and we're going to focus on developing those core skills to that next level. Now, and then I'm going to really tell you how does this work in the e-GMAT architecture. Now we're going to solve a question, and in this question, you have to pre-think. You have to understand that must be true aspect of assumption. If you don't understand that must be true aspect of assumption, what's going to happen is you'll think that the question is very easy, but the answer choices will mess you up. Okay, so I'm going to put that question over here. Here is the question, and here is the poll. Good luck, guys. Hey Siri, put a timer. All right, get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to end the poll and broadcast the results so you guys can see how you guys did. Okay. So how did you find this question? How was this question? Tricky, okay. Easy, good. Medium. Tricky answer choices, moderate, typical. Good but tricky, took time. Very similar answer choices, yes. Okay, against your answer, if you could choose, put the letter, put which answer choice you chose, A, B, C, D, or E. B, E, D, very similar, little tricky, E. B, tricky, E. Easy, scope for lots of assumptions, okay. No, not, it doesn't have the scope. No, it's just one assumption here. So let's see what's going on here. And one of the first things you've got to do is got to figure out what the conclusion is. Okay. So what's going on in this argument? You want to finance these road repairs, and the Highway Commission is considering increasing that toll. Now, how much to increase are they talking about? They're talking about a 50% increase in the current toll, which is 10 cents per mile. Okay. And the commission is making a claim saying that as we increase the toll, the annual revenue is going to go up by 50%. Okay. And then the question says, hey, what's an assumption on which the commissioner's claim depends? Okay. Now, what's the commissioner's claim? Commissioner's claim is the annual revenue generated by toll highway will increase by 50%, which means last year, if the toll highway generated 1 million of annual revenue, then this year it's going to go to at least 1.51, or let's call it 1.6 million. Okay. All right. Everyone's clear with this? Right? And this is a question in which you have to formulate your conclusion, because it's a combination of what's given in the argument and what's given in the question stem. So you've got to formulate it, but that formulation is fairly easy overall. Really important to do this visualization overall. So how do we estimate annual revenue in this case? How do we estimate annual revenue given the information in the argument? Here is the information in the argument here. Okay, 10 times miles. Toll fee multiplied by total miles, not kilometers, but miles. Okay, so annual revenue is toll per mile multiplied by the total number of toll miles. Is that clear to everyone? Simple, right? You're given 10 cents per mile, so it is done on a per mile basis. Okay. Now, let's ask our pre-thinking question. Under what circumstances, given the facts and the argument, will the conclusion break down? Which means, under what circumstances would the annual revenue not increase by 50%, provided that toll per mile has been increased by 50%? We know this is going to go up by 50%. Under what circumstances will this not go up by 50%? So what's the only scenario in which toll per mile will not go up? What's the scenario in which this will not go up? If the total number of miles decreases. So that's my only conclusion breakdown scenario. If that's my only conclusion breakdown scenario, then my assumption is total number of miles does not decrease. Is everyone clear about the pre-thinking? Is this clear? Okay. I have a doubt with this. Can we explain how we arrived at the conclusion? Let's go back over here to the argument. Which of the following is an assumption on which the highway commissioner's claim depends? What is the claim? The highway commissioner claims that the toll revenue will increase the annual revenue generated by 50%. So if you look at this, this is what you would come up with. That's his claim, right? That's his conclusion. A claim and a conclusion are the same. Okay, we're going to look at every answer choice. We're going to look at, does the highway commissioner claim anything about repair costs or covering all the repair costs? So are the repair costs even relevant to his claim? No. Does that help answer that question about choice A? Somewhat. In what ways does it not? Let me give you a parallel question. Okay. If your boss tells you, I'm going to give you $10 million, build a business that generates, $4 million in revenue. You take those $10 million, 2 years later, you come back with $4 million, and in exchange of that condition, you were promised a bonus. Now, your boss tells you, hey, the company didn't make a profit as a whole, but you did your job, so I can't give you that profit. In that case, would that be fair to you? It probably would not be. Why? Because that wasn't a precondition for the job that was given to you. In the same way, the highway commissioner did not really say, I'm going to generate enough revenue to be able to do all of road repairs. Is the highway commissioner saying that I'm going to get enough money to be able to do all the road repairs? Is that what they're saying in the argument? No, they're not saying that. Maybe this toll increase is only supposed to generate half the money needed for road repairs. Maybe the other half is going to come from the government. Okay, we don't know that. All the highway commissioner is claiming is if we increase the toll overall, then my overall revenue is going to go up by 50%. Okay. As someone said, road repairs are the reason for it, but not the objective to finance all of this. Okay. So let's look at choice B. A lot of people chose choice B. But 30% of the class chose choice B, B for boy. Okay. How many of you were confused with choice when you read choice B and said, man, this looks interesting? How many of you were confused? Okay. And this is an excellent question because it's an official question. It's an excellent official question because you really have to understand that must be true. Okay. The choice B says the total number of trips made on the toll highway will not decrease from its current level. So what it's saying is, let's say last year there were 1,000 trips made on the toll highway. This year we would still have 1,000 trips made on the toll highway. Okay. Now my question to you is this must be true? Do we need 1,000 trips to ensure that the total number of miles will not decrease? What if there are 950 trips? Does it actually mean that the total number of miles traveled on the highway will go down? No. How can we still have a similar and identical number of miles traveled despite reduction in trips? Longer trips, right? Okay. Does it really mean the total number of miles traveled will decrease? No, not really. Why? Because we could take longer trips. Okay. So is this must be true? Is choice B must be true? Does it satisfy my must be true condition? No, it's a great strengthener, but it's not an assumption. Which is where I said, if you understand that definition of an assumption, if you're confused, go back, read that definition once again or recite it in your head and ask this question. Is this must be true? You'd be absolutely certain. You'd reject it or select it with 100% certainty. Clear to everyone who chose choice B? Or those who were even confused with choice B? All right, let's look at choice E. Choice E is in line with our pre-thinking. It talks about the total distance travel. Okay. Will not decrease from its current level. Okay. And which is the same as total number of miles. Let's look at choice C. Choice C is actually the complement of choice B. Choice C talks about the average length of trip. What can compensate for the average length of trip? More trips. Yes, number of trips. Perfect. So if the average length of trip goes down, we can have more trips. Again, is choice C a strengthener? Absolutely. Is it a must be true? Absolutely not. Okay. In this question, choices B, C, and D all were great strengtheners, but neither one of them was a must be true. And this is the value of pre-thinking. It channelizes your energy on what's important to the argument. And as long as you do this, you're going to find that you reject answer choices with a lot of confidence. Now, these close answer choices, would they have been correct? Would any one of them have been correct even if choice E were not there? Choices B, C, or D. If choice E were not here, no, it won't be. Why? Because it doesn't satisfy the definition of what must be true is. Neither one of them satisfies the definition of what must be true is. They seem close to you, but they are absolutely wrong. They're as wrong as choice A is. There is nothing called a second best. Let me be very clear to you. On the GMAT, whether you're talking about SC or CR or RC, there is no second best answer choice. The 4 choices that are there are absolutely wrong. The one choice that is there, that is the correct answer, is absolutely correct. If the GMAT were to make another correct option, it wouldn't be out of the 4 that's there. It would have to make a brand new option. Okay. Anyone who says, here, this is a close answer choice, doesn't know how the GMAT works. There is no close answer choice. Things are very black and white. They're absolutely wrong or absolutely right. The question number 3 was a 700 level question. Is that clear? And you can look at any CR question. There's nothing that's out there that where an answer choice would, where an incorrect answer choice could be justified. Okay, now questions 4 and 5 are really hard. Now, this was a difficult question. Questions 4 and 5 are even more challenging. The reason why they are here is because I want you to see how, if you pre-think an argument properly, if you visualize information, if you build that logical structure, you follow the pre-thinking approach, then getting to the correct answer becomes a piece of cake. So do not judge yourself on how you do on these questions. Okay. The purpose of this webinar is to make sure that you learn. This is what I call as a low risk webinar. You're not here to get everything right. If you get everything right, then maybe you reinforce something that you already knew, but you've not learned that much more. But if you get some things right and some things wrong, that's when you are in the right place in this webinar. Okay. Level these questions, 750. Yes. I often get confused between 2 answer choices in the end while solving. How do I tackle and avoid choosing the wrong option? Please, please, please don't congratulate yourself when you do that. So, most hard questions. What percentage of people? So, most of you are aiming for that 730 score, correct? Right? Most of you are aiming for that round about that 730 score, plus minus 20 points. What percentile is that 730 score? What percentile is it? 96th. 97th is 740, but 96, which means you're aiming to be among the top 4 percentile of students worldwide. Okay. I want to set this in context because you need to understand what I'm saying when you say, I'm confused between 2 answer choices. In a hard question, what is the typical accuracy of a hard question? The typical accuracy of a hard question is about 40%. Okay, 40% is there. Now, how many people choose the next best answer choice? About 30%. Okay, so this is the next best. That's 30%, which means if you're able to narrow down to the last 2 answer choices, you are among 70% of students. Someone who's aiming to be in the top 4%, should that person be happy to be among 70% of all students out there? In most CR questions? Should that person be happy? Yes, no? Not at all. So please, when you read stuff out there which says, I'm able to narrow it down to the last two, so you're closer. No, you're not closer. Why is it that I don't like people saying that? Because when people say that, they're congratulating themselves for 30%. Okay. They're not focusing on the fact that they're confused between two, which means there is a gap in their visualization, which means they've missed out a certain aspect of the argument, because they should not be missing out on this. They should not be confused, because as I said, every other answer choice is absolutely wrong. And what happens when you congratulate yourself to really say, I've rejected the three answer choices, but I'm amongst the last two? You don't focus on improving from that point on. That improvement is minuscule. But if you kick yourself and really say, which aspect did I miss? Why did I miss? Let me figure out the cause. That's when you improve. Okay. So please, please, please do not congratulate yourself and say, hey, so what? I was able to get to the last two. No. Is it advisable to review all the concept files if I'm stuck with two answer choices most of the time? Absolutely not. It's advisable to do the causal error log. Please go revise the error log module 3 times. Please, please, please. If there's a chink in an armor, then plating the entire armor, make sure that you plate over the chink, but that chink as a weakness still remains. If you examine the armor properly, you'll figure out where that chink is and you'll fix that chink. And it's better that you burn over here than you waste your time, or lower for your standards and aim for a lower school. I'm sorry. Okay, with that, last two questions. Are we ready? Okay. So we're gonna do these two questions as a quiz. Again, challenging questions. Don't judge yourself. Focus on learning. Okay. So RDS Technologies, this is the first question. Because these are difficult questions, I don't want to time you guys. So I want 30 people to choose not answered. That way, when you choose an option other than not answered, I know you guys are done, and that's when I'm going to call time. 20 people have chosen not answered. I want 30 people to choose not answered. All right, good. I'm going to remove broadcast results. Here is your first question. Good luck, guys. All right, guys, about 75% of the class is done. I'm going to give you 10 more seconds, get those answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Last chance. I'm going to end the poll. Here's how you guys did. All right, so we're going to go to the next one. Again, you know the drill. Click on not answered. 130 people to say not answered before I show the next question. Okay, I have. Again, this is for the next poll. You've not even seen the question stem. So don't choose an answer. Okay, I'm going to remove broadcast results. Here is the next question. Good luck, guys. All right, pretty much everyone's done. Get those answers in 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Broadcast results. You can see a much better chart over here than was there for the previous question. So, how do these questions feel? How do you guys feel about these questions? Tough. Yes, these are difficult questions. I said that. I'm taking and again, Q1 usually is, for most people, is much more challenging than Q2, but both Q1 and Q2 are really challenging questions overall. When we evaluate experts, who we want to hire, excuse me, we look at both Q1, we look at versions of both Q1 and Q2. That's our way, and then we cross-question them. Okay. So let's kind of look at the conclusion of question number 1. We are on question number 1 overall. So the conclusion says the number of Erlanders receiving special program information did not increase significantly in 1990 during this time period. So what it's saying is, if in 94 there were 1 million Erlanders who received this special program information, then in 96 we had that number was more or less 1 million. It could be 990K, it could be 1.01 million, but more or less 1 million over here. And we are only talking about people from Wordland, okay, or let's call them V's. There are no brownie points for pronouncing this name properly. We're only talking about special program information, not all programs. Everyone understands this? This is what the conclusion is all about, just visualizing this conclusion. Okay. And again, you can really see, as in every question, we've done this sort of a visualization. The more you do this, the more this becomes automatic in your brain. The faster you end up doing this, the more precise you become overall. Okay. So let's look at the argument structure. This is the main conclusion over here. We just read through the statement. Now, there are a couple of things that happened between 94 and 96. The number of RDS radios, which is the number of radios that people have in their houses or people list on which people listen on, remain the same. So there were a million radios in 94, there were a million in 96. But the number of transmitting towers increased a lot. They more than doubled. Okay. All right. And then you have this context here which says, hey, if you want to get that special program information, you need a mated pair. You need one, the radio in the house, the receiving radio, RR, and then you also need the transmitting radio or the radio station. All right. Is the argument clear to everyone? This is the argument. You need a mated set to receive special program information between 94 to 96. Number of transmitting towers more than doubled. Receiving radios remained more or less the same. And the author is saying, hey, the number of people receiving that special program information probably did not go up a whole lot. Okay. This is the logical structure here. To receive RDS programming, you need RDS transmitter and receiving radios. These are the two things that happen. This is the conclusion. We talked about all of this. So we're going to go follow the same process. And I wanted to ask you this question. We're going to look at every answer choice. So let's not go to answer choices yet. Remember, pre-thinking is done before you look at answer choices. Under what circumstances will there be a significant addition to the number of people receiving RDS programming, given the fact that there are very few additional radios, but then there are a lot more transmitting stations? Can you tell me some scenarios in which I can break this conclusion down, where there can be a significant addition? If more people are using the same radio, yes. If we start putting these radios in Starbucks and then people are listening to them, yes, absolutely. What else can happen? What about the geographical location? The reach was less earlier, and now these new stations are put in places where people had the right radios, but essentially had no coverage. Okay, if you're in India, you'd say, hey, if you had a 5G phone but had a Vodafone connection, and then Vodafone got 5G, which all of us are wishing. Okay. So the two scenarios are, if we put these towers in areas where people had the right kind of radio, okay, so that way they now get coverage, and they didn't have, those people who didn't have coverage in 94, they now get coverage. Or if we increase the number of people per radio, if we start putting them in Starbucks. Can you guys see in both these scenarios, my conclusion breaks down? Correct? These are my conclusion breakdown scenarios. And the person who made the statement here, 1994 due to lesser RDS stations and the network coverage was lesser, so in 1996 it improved, but it would depend on how the planning was done. Absolutely, yes. You're thinking through the problem. I like that. This is where your visualization muscle is being exercised. Okay. So my assumptions are new stations don't increase the coverage or people per radio remain about the same. Can you guys see that these are good assumptions? We need this for the conclusion to be true. Can you guys see this? We don't want new stations to increase coverage. Why? Because if that happens, more people start to receive RDS programming. And people per radio should remain the same. People per RDS radio, that is. All right. With that, let's look at how you guys polled over here. This is how you guys polled. Choice A, 23% of the people chose choice A. Choice D was the most popular choice. 34% of the people chose choice D. And choice B was really popular as well. Now, this is a beautiful question, both from the standpoint of visualization and from the stand of the argument and from the standpoint of translating the answer choices into appropriate context. And this is where I said this is equivalent to the learnings from this are equivalent to the learnings that you'd get from 3 questions, which is what makes it challenging and makes it fun. Choice A is my correct answer. Let's see what choice A says. It says few if any of the RDS. Few if any means almost none. Translation of few if any is almost none of the RDS radio stations that began broadcasting after 94. These are the new radio stations. So this over here is 2, and this here is 2 as well. Broadcast to people with RDS equipped radios living in areas not previously reached. This is 3, and this over here is 3 as well. What this choice is saying is, as the new radio stations that we are putting in, they do not increase the coverage. So they are put in the same areas where the old radio stations were. So these new radio stations do not reach new people, and which is essential. This choice means, yes, as that the increase in number of RDS stations did not increase the coverage or the reach in 1996. And that's important. Why? Because if it increases the coverage, I get more people, my conclusion breaks down. Okay. The negation of this is at least some radio stations increase coverage. If that happens, then I as an author cannot say with 100% certainty the number of people receiving special program information in 1996 remained all as much as it was in 1994. Okay. You can see why this is the correct answer. I'm going to go through every other incorrect answer choice. So don't worry about the choice that you chose. You're going to get a good explanation for it. But I want you to tell me, can you see why this is the correct answer and how this was in line with our pre-thinking? And yes, this is super wordy. That's where the learning is. This translation from 1 to 1, from 2 to 2, and from 3 to this part over here, 3, is really, really important. Imagine how much it will help you in CR and in understand and kind of answering other CR questions correctly, as well as answering other RC questions. I mean, there's one thing you can say, man, this was very challenging, or the other thing you can really say is, wow, there's just so much learning. Let me just analyze this answer choice more and see why is it that I wasn't able to make this translation. Yes, that was the difficult part of this question. It's one of the aspects of the difficult part of this, difficult parts of this question. And that's what makes this question beautiful. It doesn't use, I mean, one of the other things you notice is there any challenging vocabulary over here? Is there any challenging vocabulary? No, right? The other thing is, you may have had to reread this answer choice to understand it in the context of this question. But if you were to get a similar answer choice again, will you take just as long or will you take less time? If you do a good job here, we spend the necessary time here. Significantly less time, right? Because if you translate chunks of it and really say, this is how I'm going to translate it, the next time the translation would happen a lot faster and with a lot more confidence. And that's how you get better. That's how you save time. Okay, and that's the value of going from 1 to 2 as we talked about in that chart. All right. Can you see how much fun this answer choice was? How much learning there was in this answer choice? Okay, this other statement over here. Because this choice was A, it became even more difficult. Again, guys, have confidence in your ability. Please, please, please. Have confidence in your ability. If you truly want to get to that 730, 740, 750 score, trust yourselves. Okay. Start trusting yourself. You've got to have a very different attitude towards this. Let's look at choice B here. Now, before I go into choice B, I want you to tell me what's the definition of an assumption. I want you to type it out. It should be, you recite it in your brain. Type it out. What is the definition of an assumption? An unstated idea that must be true for the conclusion to be valid. Very good. Okay. All right. I'm going to come back to this, but remember this definition of an assumption. I'm going to come back to this choice B. I want to address this. Time management becomes crucial, so you cannot spend much time on the first choice. How long is your MBA typically? How long is an MBA? About 2 years. For some of you, it's 1 year, depending on where you go. Okay. In the business world, how long do you have to make a decision? How long do you have to make a decision? Give me. Let's say you have to decide where to invest $5 million. How much time do you think you'll have? You won't have minutes. No, typically. Okay, a week's more realistic. No, it's not going to be 30 minutes either. A week to a month. So it's going to be 1 week to 1 month. You have to figure out, depending on where you are. Okay. 1 week to 1 month in most cases. All right. I'm not talking about those extreme scenarios where you are you're informed at the fag end of a small acquisition or something. But in most investment scenarios, that's what you would have. Your MBA is 2 years. But you have to make a decision in 1 week or a month. Why do you need to spend 2 years to do an MBA if in the end you have to make a decision in 1 week or a month? Have you ever questioned this aspect? What are you doing in these 2 years? You're building skills, right? You need certain skills. You need to be able to apply certain frameworks. And to build those skills, you need those 2 years. Why would you not apply the same thought process to your learning? Why do you think that you're going to take the same amount of time on the actual GMAT as you're taking over here when you're in the learning phase? Why do you not ask the same question that you're asking me to B schools? Why is an MBA 2 year long when I have to make a decision in a week? Would you go to an MBA that really said, I'm going to make you and give you an MBA in a week? No way. But then you're attracted to prep providers who are going to really say, I'm going to get you to a 740 in 20 days. Right? Think about your own thought process. Over there, you're looking at a key. But when it comes to your MBA, your answer is no way. Why do you think You don't need to do that for the GMAT, building skills and honing your skills. Okay. So does that help answer the question that you will get better? Absolutely hate. I don't know if you've heard it, but I used to hear it a lot when I was looking at what other experts were saying. But there were certain experts who had this notion that if you are taking that long to solve a question using a method, then figure out another way to solve a question. Okay. Their notion is you won't improve. If you're not improving, then why are you selling a course? You think people won't improve with regards to the timing. Challenge is time management. Without guessing, how can one attempt all questions? Here's a challenge that I will give you. How long is the verbal section on the GMAT? On the current GMAT, how long is the verbal section? Okay. 65 minutes. What if I give you 80 minutes? Do you think you can get a V40 if I give you 80 minutes? Do you think? No, you guess. Potential. Try it out. $80 minutes. Okay. Try it out. You won't be able to get a V40 if you don't have the ability. And by the way, if you have the ability, you'd be able to get there in those 65 minutes. Or even have some time left in the end. Okay. So when you guys sweat over timing on the GMAT, you're sweating over the wrong thing. 90% of your score on the GMAT is about your ability. And I don't know why, but GMAT experts like to give you the to kind of make you worry about timing really early on in the process. Yeah, build the skills. Timing is not a skill that you build. Timing is an outcome of the skills that you have. Anyone plays a sport here? Okay, which one? Badminton, volleyball. All right, football, pistol shooting and volleyball. All right, swimming, ping pong. So let's talk about let's take a look at cricket. Let's look at badminton. In badminton, how do you get significantly fast at picking up a drop shot or going back? How do you become significantly fast? By practicing the basic skills. All right. Agility training, covering how do you get fast at covering the court is my question. If you don't build your leg muscles, if you don't build memory, it's not just about doing the same thing again and again and becoming fast. That's a slow way to become fast. A faster way to become fast is essentially building on your leg muscles, being able to lunge and being able to move back. So building the muscles that work towards moving back. So if you really focus on your fitness in general on the gym, you're going to get much faster. Someone talked about cricket, right? What's Kohli's running speed between the wickets? How fast does Kohli accelerate and to which speed? 32 kilometers per hour. How fast does he accelerate to that? He does this, he gets there before he reaches the middle of the pitch. Okay. He didn't get to 32 kilometers per hour before he gets half of the pitch, which is 11 yards, by running. He got there by focusing on building his calves. Because had he gotten there by running, and running, other people would have gotten there too. Okay. So focus on building muscle and timing will happen automatically. Okay. Let's come back to choice B. Sorry about that. Choice B says, in 1996, most worldlanders who lived within the listening area of an RDS station already had a radio equipped to receive RDS. Okay. What's my conclusion? What's my conclusion? The number of people between 94 and 96 remained more or less the same. Everyone remembers that conclusion? Right? 94 and 96. The number of people remained more or less the same. Yes, no? Okay. Now, tell me this. For my conclusion to be true, is most needed? Let's translate most to 60%. Okay. Is it required that 60% of people in 94 have the RDS radio? And is it required that 60% of people in 96 have an RDS radio? In other words, would the conclusion not be true that if in 94 just 20% of people had an RDS radio, and also in 96 just 20% of people had an RDS radio? Is that 60% must be true? Is that 60% required? The answer is no. It's not required. It's not must be true. Why? Because the conclusion is about the change in number of people or listeners from 94 to 96. It's not about how many people had the radio in 94 or in 96. Is that clear? Is that clear? Let's look at choice C. Equipping a radio station with RDS technology does not decrease the station's listening area. Okay. What's the listening area with regards to RDS programming if a station does not have RDS technology? Can a station transmit any RDS programming without RDS technology? Yes, no? No. So if equipping a station with RDS technology impacts the range, what kind of programming does it impact? RDS or non-RDS? RDS or non-RDS? What kind of programming? Non-RDS. Are we concerned about that in my conclusion? No. So this choice is completely irrelevant. Let's look at choice D. Choice D was really popular. Let me just go over here. And let's look at RDS technologies. You can see how many people chose choice D. It's the most popular choice. 24 people chose choice D. Let's see why this is wrong. Choice D says, in 1996, worldlanders or V's who did not own radios equipped to receive RDS. Do we care about these people who don't have RDS radios? Are they even relevant to us? No. Could not receive any programming from RDS stations that began broadcasting after 94. We don't care about people who don't have RDS stations. We don't care about any programming. We only care about RDS programming. Okay, this choice is completely irrelevant. But a lot of people think, oh, it has this attractive word any, and a lot of correct answer choices in excuse me, in critical reasoning have the word any. So I'm going to choose this. How many of you did that? Okay, absolutely wrong in this case. It's not restating the facts, because people who don't have an RDS a radio could receive normal programming. That's absolutely okay. So this is not consistent or not repeating the facts from the argument either. Okay. All right. What did we learn from this particular question? What were your key takeaways? What did we learn? Oh man, you guys are tired. Spend time to understand the answer choices. Visualize them. Really important. Read and rephrase a sentence that is long and wordy. Pre-think. Yes, really important. Okay. Shelby will refuse. We're going to take our visualization to the next level in this. What happened? Last year, we did not recycle. So we sent everything for incineration. Let's assume one trash can is a truck. How many trucks did we send for incineration? How many trucks did we send for incineration last year? If one trash can is one truck, visualization is absolutely paramount. Okay, 10, correct. Thank you for counting. Now this year, we're going to recycle and we're going to send some trucks over here. Now, read the argument and so last year we sent 10 trucks for incineration. I want you to tell me how many trucks do you think we'll send for incineration if we receive 10 times as much refuse? So if this is 10x, if the amount of garbage collected is 10 times as much as it was last year, and we sent 10 trucks last year, as per the information in the argument, how many trucks do you think we'll send for incineration? Make sure you read the argument carefully. Visualize what's there in the argument before you choose the answer. Come on, guys. I need about 30 responses. I have 20 responses so far. How many trucks am I sending for incineration this year if I collect 10 times as much garbage? 20, 32, 30 odd answers. Okay, I have 30 odd answers. I'm going to end the poll. Really important question. I was hoping for more participation. Only 17% of you got this right. The correct answer is 5 trucks. Okay, really important piece of information. And this is where visualization is really important here. Let's read this. This year, city services will separate for recycling enough refuse to reduce, to is a purpose word, to reduce the number of truckloads of refuse to be incinerated to half of last year's number. What it's saying is, regardless of how much garbage we collect, we're only going to send half as many trucks as we did last year for incineration. Even if we collect 10 times as much garbage, we're only going to send 5 trucks if we sent 10 trucks last year. Read it, translate it, and then tell me if you understand it. Do you guys understand it? And can you see the beauty of language here? Okay, so I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. Our goal really is to reduce the ash generated to be half of what it was generated last year. So I'll go through the same process. I'm going to ask the same question. Okay. The objective is not to refuse a number of trucks to half of last year's number. The objective is to reduce the amount of ash generated. Okay. The helping piece is that we're only going to send half as many trucks. So my falsification question is, under what conditions will the ash generated be more than 50%? Remember, I'm going to break the conclusion down. Even if I only send half as many trucks. So in what scenario will the ash generated be greater than 50%? Even if I send half as many trucks as I sent last year? In what scenario can this happen? Yes. Why would increase in garbage matter if I'm only sending half as many trucks? If trash is more, what does that mean? What does if trash is more mean? If ash generation per truck is high, that's the only case. The only possible scenario in which I am going to generate more ash, my amount of ash generated would be more than 50% of what it was last year, is if I pack these trucks up so tightly that ash per truckload is higher this year than was last year. Is that clear? That's the only scenario. If I pack these trucks up so tightly, yes, if the trucks contains so much trash that ash per truckload goes much higher. Okay. So my assumption is that shouldn't happen. The ash per truckload should be similar to or less than what it was last year. Okay. So let's look at how you guys polled. This is how you guys polled. Choice D is the correct answer. 37% of you got to choice D. Look at how many people chose choices C and E. Choice B was popular. Choice A was popular as well. Choice A says, this year, no materials that city services could separate for recycling will be incinerated. This is a must-be true choice. However, the problem is it does not provide any new information. This information is already there in the argument. Since it doesn't provide any new information, this choice does not satisfy the first condition of an assumption, which is that it must provide new information that's not there in the argument. Okay. Remember, an assumption is an unstated idea required for the conclusion to be valid. People who chose choice A, is that clear? Let's look at choice B. Choice B talks about the cost. We don't care about the cost. Let's move forward. Choice C talks about the proportion of recyclable materials. Do we care about it? Absolutely not. Why? Because we are only going to send half as many truckloads, regardless of the proportion, less or more. Choice D talks about the ash per truckload. This is what's relevant to us. We talked about this, and this is the correct answer. You can see the negation test being applied over here as well. Choice E talks about the total quantity of refuse. That doesn't matter. Why? Because regardless of the total quantity of refuse, I'm going to send half as many truckloads. Okay. So, what did you learn from this question? What did you learn from this question? What did you learn from this question? How to visualize. Look for the right goal. All right. Understanding the question is key. Try not to focus on irrelevant information. Assumption has to provide new information. Good. Okay. Now, you've got to do this one step at a time. But remember this, that none of this is rocket science. This is something that each one of you can do as long as you excel in one thing at a time. Okay. So how do you build those skills one thing at a time? So the question you have to ask is, why do you make mistakes? You make mistakes because you don't visualize information properly. You don't understand the conclusion. You don't build the logical structure. And you, again, don't visualize the answer choices. And you can really see at each one of these three things you guys have faltered in the questions that we solved today. So you've got to build these skills one at a time. As long as you achieve mastery on all grounds, you're going to be able to answer every CR question correctly. Okay, but you've got to build these skills one step at a time. So one of the most important things is start with the foundation. Make sure you understand how to classify statements as premises, conclusions, intermediate conclusions, anti-premises, and so on and so forth. If you're an e-GMAT student, the module on premise and conclusion is really relevant for you. That's about 2 hours of learning just on doing that. Then you should learn how to visualize statements properly. Our inference module does that. it starts with drawing inferences and doing visualizations on simple statement. We teach you how do you visualize only, all, some, most, the. These are really important keywords. They have special visualizations here. Okay. Then we teach you how to combine statements and visualize them. Then we evaluate you on this. And all of these are not completion stats. These are your skill stats for these files, because each of these files has a set of quizzes in them. Okay. You practice this, then we teach you how to apply them on 700 level inference questions. Then you practice this again. And each one of these files has feedback built in. The whole goal of this module is to teach you visualization. Really important. This is where you learn how to visualize. Once you do this, you then learn all of this in critical reasoning and starting with assumptions. So this is something which is there in the free trial. If you've not evaluated the free trial, make sure you do this. Make sure you go through introduction to assumption, logical gap, and two entities. If you are a paid student, you get the entire module. We teach you how to pre-think on every argument type. Arguments that have logical gap, arguments that compare two entities, arguments that compare segments, arguments that are more complex where you compare entities and segments together, and then quant-focused arguments. So we make you familiar with pre-thinking in all of these. Then we test you in an integrated fashion in this. Just in this over here, you have close to 50 assumption questions, all created by e-GMAT, all of them original. Okay. Then you follow the same things and evaluate, strengthen, weaken, logically complete, and so on and so forth. So you build one skill at a time, you excel on it, and you get evaluated on it, and you get personalized feedback on each skill. Okay. And yes, Anirudh, this method applies to all CR questions. So the process remains the same. The pre-thinking question is modified slightly based on the question type. So assumption has one pre-thinking question. The strengthened pre-thinking question is slightly different. Evaluate pre-thinking question is actually very similar to that of assumption. Weaken pre-thinking question is slightly different, but the process remains the same. And once you excel in assumption, then so doing inference and assumption is about 60% of all the learning in CR. And then after that, everything is derivative. Okay. Then you go through cementing. You go through cementing quizzes. Make sure you achieve the threshold on medium cementing quizzes. This is not a graphic. It's actually a screenshot from our Scholinium platform. We have these things called cementing quizzes that we evaluate you on. And you're not going to achieve this threshold over here in the first go, which is why we have 5, 6, 7, and once, up to 9 hard cementing and up to 9 medium cementing quizzes. But then as you do strategic review, you're going to hit that threshold. This is a 95th percentile ability, that 80% accuracy on hard questions. Okay. This is how your timing will vary. People are worried about timing. You can see how the average time as the accuracy increases, the average time per question goes down. Again, this is a graphic from Scholinium. This is not something that's just created for PowerPoint. This is an actual screenshot, and we track this. And one thing that you will see over here is this is 30 plus attempts. This is the last 15 attempts. Same thing over here. So we actually know that as you apply the process, you get better at it and your timing reduces automatically. And we make sure that we track this and we alert you on this. Okay. This is how you get to that 90th percentile. You can see last 20 questions. You can filter this out, just the hard questions here. And you can see this is the threshold that you need. This is 95th percentile ability. Okay. Here's a guy who went from 570 to 740 in 4 months. Someone who thought he was very good at CR because he taught physics at an undergraduate level. But then he messed up. That's where the 570 came from. But the moment he started doing things methodically, he was able to get to a 740. He's currently studying at Tuck. Okay. So with that, start your pre-thinking journey. and check the free trial out. All right, with that, I've come to the end of the webinar. Any questions that you have, I'd be happy to address those. But I'd like to get some feedback on your takeaways from the webinar. And let me share this session PDF with you. There's a session PDF. And for those of you not connected with me on LinkedIn, this is where you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Will we have more webinars? Yes, absolutely. We have the algebra webinar tomorrow, RC webinar next week. So yes, we will have more webinars. Let me see if I can share upcoming free webinars over here. And Sirish, thank you for the feedback. So here are the upcoming webinars. You guys can click on these links to register for these webinars. So this is for the algebra webinar. This is for the RC webinar. Overall. What are the free resources given by e-GMAT? Just log into your e-GMAT account. You will see free resources in SC, CR, RC, MSR, GI, and TA, algebra, number properties, in fact, even geometry. So lots of free resources. About 2% of all our courses out there. So, when you look at the free trials, about 2% of all our course. So you can really see. We don't have SC in the focus edition, but in pace view, I can see that. Again, there's no SC in the focus edition, and you won't see SC in the data insights part. So I'm not sure I understand that question. Free trial, 2 to 3% of all the information that we have, yes. But then, even that 2 to 3% will take you about 20 odd hours to go through. Now, remember this, most people who buy the e-GMAT course don't do the entire e-GMAT course. Why? Because our course is built assuming that in every subsection you're starting at a 20th percentile, and you don't. So that's where technology comes in, and it ensures that you focus just on the right piece. A lot of people say they provide personalized study plans, but then they say we're going to provide 2 study plans and you can personalize out of those. e-GMAT last year created 10,000 unique study plans. So while we offer so much material, they only focus on material that's useful to them, material that they don't really need, that they really need to work on. For example, in the quant offering, we have a personalized adaptive course engine that builds just a personal course set for you. Throughout the course, you have diagnostics. As you take the diagnostic, it really just says, hey, these are the files that you need to worry about. These are the other files that I've grayed out. You don't need to worry about them. Just last year, that PACE engine saved about 3 million minutes of redundant learning. Okay. So yeah, check the free trial out and see if you like that learning. Then look at it. Then check out the course. I think we have a deal going on right now. Okay. All right, guys. How do you choose between the US and Europe when it comes to B schools? So in general, when you think about MBA, the US has way more business schools than Europe does. Europe, INSEAD, IESC, LBS, IMD, Switzerland. These are 4 great schools in Europe. But beyond that, I don't know of schools that are of the same caliber as what I would call as the top 30 schools in the US. So even a Keenan Flagler, which is ranked around the 27, 28, is way better than any other school beyond these 4. In fact, Keenan Flagler, in my opinion, is even slightly better than IESC. So that's kind of one way to look at it. But IMD, ISB, IMD Switzerland, INSEAD, and LBS, absolutely phenomenal schools. They'd probably be just as good as any school in the US overall. In terms of the amount of money that you earn, people in the US earn way more money than people elsewhere, and they keep a much larger proportion of that money in their pockets. In Europe, the taxes will kill you. As someone who's lived in Europe for about 4 years, as someone who's lived in the US for about 18 years, when it comes to earning money, US is way better than Europe. Okay, when it comes to a peaceful life, Europe is way better than the US. When it comes to culture, um, US is way better. Europe is way better than US. But again, that's where it depends on what you care about overall. But money, nothing beats the US. Quality of education, US is absolutely top notch. What are my thoughts on ISB or IM versus German colleges? So I don't know a whole lot about German business schools. Let me be very, very frank. I know a lot about life in Germany in general, having lived there, and I can tell you that life in Germany is excellent. At the same time, it's not nearly as entrepreneurial as life in India is. So if you go to Germany, if you're looking for a pretty good job and essentially a very comfortable life, then Germany is phenomenal that way. It's very welcoming. The visa system now is very good. And I think if you get to one of the top schools such as Frankfurt or Berlin, then you'd be fine. Okay. It's not going to be as entrepreneurial because just in general, the German culture outside of the big cities is not as entrepreneurial. Security is a big problem in the US. In what ways do you think security is a big problem in the US? Can you elaborate on that? Crime rate. Okay. In what way? Again, explain to me. Explain the crime rate. Tell me a bit more, a few more words. A lot of people think people carry guns in the US, so it's not safe. How many of you are worried about that part? People carrying guns. By the way, when you're worried about crime rates, some cities are not safe to walk during daytimes, let alone at nights. Tell me which one do you think is not safe to walk during daytime? And yeah, you'd love living there. Let me be very clear. As a country, the US is rarely inviting for foreigners. You would not feel for a moment that you are an outsider in the US. And it's just the culture. Now, the culture in Germany is also very good, but one of the first 10 words that I learned in Germany was an Auslander, which is an outsider. Okay. It's just the German culture, not because they wanted me to feel bad. It's just that's there in that culture. In the US, that's not there. Okay. Number one. Number two, as I said, I have lived in both places. If you live in Europe, outside of Germany, even in the Netherlands. Anyone here from the Netherlands? Anyone here? So 2018. So as I said, I love Europe, and I like to go back to Europe. Whenever I can. So 2018, we spent about a month and a half in Europe. I lived there. I worked from there, and so I was in downtown Eindhoven. Eindhoven, by the way, is the most innovative city in the world with regards to the fact that number of patents filed per capita is the highest in Eindhoven. Okay, you should check that statistic up. So I was in downtown Eindhoven. We had a big house over there, and about 2 weeks into our stay, our neighbor comes in and says, "Hey, uh, we essentially someone blo- someone actually robbed one of our neighbors, but then we don't have to worry about it because the police came in about 45 minutes." Okay, someone broke into the neighbor's house, and the police came in about 45 minutes. And she kept on repeating that fact for about 5 times, and I was surprised, like, why is she saying that in 45 minutes isn't great? Because in the US, um, the police typically comes in about 10 minutes or so. That's the most that we've seen. And so I asked a few of my friends who were in Eindhoven, and they really say, hey, when it comes to thefts, the police does not do a whole lot in Eindhoven. So when you're talking about crime rates, remember the context. How is the US when it comes to starting a new business? For immigrants, how tough is it to start a new business? So the challenge part with regards to starting a new business in the US is that on an H-1B visa, unless and until you have a green card holder as a partner, it's going to be very difficult. However, from getting funding point of view, it's not tough at all. Okay. So as long as you can find a partner, you can start a business. Is the recent influx of students in Europe a good thing? Does it mean there's increasing opportunities? So Europe has a lot of opportunities given its aging population. Let me say there are good jobs there. It's just they're not as high paying and as high paying. Let me just be very comparative as the jobs in the US. And the salary growths are not as much as those in the US. It's just the very European culture that is there. Oh, taxation is the EU in EU is one of the major reasons I left the EU. Whenever I would get €2,000 as bonus, I'd only get 800 in my pocket. That's how the taxes were. So that says post MBA H1B issue is a big concern. Your views? My view is there is no concern if you go to a top school. Why? Because most MBA programs are top MBA programs are STEM MBAs, and you get 3 years to get an H1B visa, 3+1. So you have 4 opportunities to apply for it. So not a problem. Which are the best schools for venture capital and entrepreneurship? So any top school will do. Let me be very clear. Now I know rankings put Stanford and Babson to be number 1 and number 2, vice versa. Babson, and I went to Babson. I can tell you, Babson's number 1 when it comes to a traditional family business. When it comes to tech entrepreneurship, Babson's not great. If you're looking at tech entrepreneurship, I'd go to MIT, I'd go to Stanford. Those two are phenomenal when it comes to tech entrepreneurship. I know some of the professors who teach courses in tech entrepreneurship, and the way they approach problem solving in tech, that's phenomenal. The case studies, the founders that come in classes over there, the kind of learning that you have, not just from the professors or the cases, but also these founders and entrepreneurs and residents, that learning is phenomenal. Columbia is very good as well, as are schools such as Darden and Ross. So any of the top schools, they'll give you enough exposure to entrepreneurship. They'll give you enough courses, and you'll get enough contacts with VCs over there to bounce your ideas through them. Studying abroad in Europe coming versus things in Europe coming from the US. Amira is asking that question. So Amira, if you're coming from the US, you want to study abroad in Europe, if you go to a top school, it's really great. Why? Because most top schools have exchange professors, and the same thing happens. IMD gets professors of IMD go and teach in the US schools and vice versa. So that's great, and you get exposed to a brand new culture, and you're going to learn a lot overall. So yeah, I mean, for you, that's the case. And because you're coming from the US, you can go back and work there. That education is still relevant for you. Any reason why I should pick premier Indian institutions over EU? I'm very open to both. My preference is the ROI, longevity with a stable and secure life being settled in a balanced way. So today, the way I see it, both are good options. Let me be very clear. Premier means you're looking at IM, AB, and ISB. I would not go beyond these three institutions in India if you're looking at premier Indian institutions. Okay. So over premier European institutions. ROI is very subjective. MBA in general has a good return on investment as long as you do it from a top school. Now it's in your hand to convert this good to great, or to be satisfied with the same good ROI. I have friends who graduated with me and who are doing well, who are in a settled life, and they don't make as much money as I do. I have friends who make three times as much money as I do, and essentially all in terms of happiness, you can't really say who's more happy than the other. We all have made our own choices, and we're all living with it, and we all have other choices that we can make even today. So it's about what you want. Okay. We'll be sharing the recording, Diego. Yes. So the recording will be there on our YouTube channel in another 6 hours, and you'll be getting the recording in the email as well. How do you assess colleges? The top league colleges look good on resume. The cost associated is absurd. Tier two. Okay. First of all, yes, the cost is absurd. However, you have a ton of scholarships. That's why you get a good GMAT score. You know, I don't expect most people to pay the full sticker price. e-GMAT has got about $30 to $40 million worth of scholarships every year. Okay, number one. Number two, you think about buying anything, don't just look at cost, look at the return on investment. And let's say you get into a Kellogg, it's going to cost you about 1.6 1.7 crores in Indian rupees, or about $210,000. But what you're not taking into account is that the starting salary out of a Kellogg is 170K, or the fact that the average salary that you're going to earn during the 3 months of your internship is going to be $12,000, or that during your second year, if you exchange one of your credits with classes, you are going to be able to make $6,000 a month fairly easily. Okay, when I did my MBA, including my internship, I made about $60,000 during my second year. Right out of my second year, I put the down payment for my house, and I was on an F1 visa. Okay, so don't just look at the cost, look at the ROI and do the simple math. How many of you, when you think about an MBA, look at the $200,000 or $170,000 fees and really just freeze right then and there? Do the math. You're going to be making investments worth $5, $7, $10 million. You don't want to freeze then. Top 1 year MBAs. So in the US, I think Cornell, Columbia, Kellogg, they offer 1 year MBAs. We have a whole list of them on our blog. In Europe, of course, there are lots of 1 year MBAs. How much scholarship do T15 schools provide? We have an entire section on admits and scholarships. So USB schools have about $300 million of scholarship kitty. That kitty is 80% of that kitty is merit based, which means that it doesn't differentiate between an American or an Indian. Okay. So we've had students who've gone to Kellogg, Stanford, Harvard, and with 80-90% rights. Kellogg, a lot of full rights students as well. So that's there. Anirudh says, because I know ISB and IIMs have a great ranking and a brand value, but is there any reason why I shouldn't look into ISB and IIM? First of all, when I look at it at any college, I frankly don't care about the ranking or the brand value. I care about the quality of education that I'm getting, because It's the education that you have that's enduring, not the brand value. Let me be very clear. A lot of people think about that. Why should you not look into ISB and IIMs? Okay. My answer is going to be counterintuitive for you, but it's very relevant. The one of the major reasons I personally would not look at an ISB and IIM is because you get a job really easily, and this would be counterintuitive. Why is that? Because when you go to an ISB and IIM, you're going to get a job on campus. The amount of demand that you have for MBAs in India is tremendous. As a result, you don't do nearly half as much networking or job hunting as you would do in an American school. As a result, you become an MBA who knows the frameworks that any top MBA should know, but who's never learned how to hunt. On the other hand, when you go to an American or a good European school, not only do they teach you all the frameworks, they also teach you how to hunt. And trust me, once you learn how to hunt, you will hunt for life. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question, Anirudh. To most, and Anirudh lived in the US, he's saying, and hunted. Hopefully those hunting skills are helping you elsewhere as well. Do most students get scholarship considering colleges in the EU? No, EU doesn't have that much endowment money, so very few students in the EU get scholarships. Do the application round affect the selection rate? Rounds 1 and 2, there's literally no difference. A lot of people really say that there's a difference. I have done the analysis myself, but the volume of students that we get, literally no difference between round 1 and 2. Round 3, there starts to be a difference, yes. 12 plus years of experience, any problem for executive MBA from the USA? Remember, in the US, most executive MBAs, at least the good ones, need to be company sponsored or where your CEO has to sign off. Okay. So if that happens, no problem. If that doesn't happen, then yes. Does merit mean a GMAT score? Merit is two things. One is, your GMAT score. That's about half of it. The other is your likability during the interview. So half of so but 80% of all scholarship money goes to students who get a 740 or higher. After 5 years on F1 visa, can the immigrant apply for green card directly without H1B? So first of all, if you're going for an MBA, you're not going to be 5 years on an F1 visa. You're going to be 2 years, and then you're going to have the OPT. Number one. Number two, if you're going for an MBA, then without the H1B, you cannot apply for a green card. That's not going to happen. The only scenario is if you have a postdoc right now and then you get an MBA, then under, I think, the EB1 quota, you can do that. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. It was incredible to have you guys. Check out the free trial. If you like it, make use of the discount that we are offering till end of day tomorrow, right? And join the session tomorrow. With that, good luck and have an excellent day. Bye-bye. And if you have any questions, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Bye-bye.